Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today we're going to talk about the Haymaker HM100 Headphone. This is Bluetooth, it has aux, there's a lot of cool things about it. I'm going to go over a lot of the features, build quality, comfort, all that stuff in the beginning. We'll do a mic test, and I think I'm going to spend more time on sound quality than I normally do because there's a lot of different ways this headphone can sound. Then at the end, we'll give, of course, final thoughts, how it stacks up to the competition, and hopefully by the end you can decide if this is the right headphone for you or not. If you do decide this is the right one for you, I'm always going to put two links in the description. I'll have a link to Amazon. It's a generic affiliate link. It helps support the channel. By all means, buy it however you like. And I'll also have a link directly to the Haymaker's web store because it's listed there as well. So with that being said, let's dive in. Now, right off the bat at $330, you actually get a pretty high-end unboxing experience. Usually the higher-end headphones have a lot of premium boxing materials, and the Haymaker actually does a really good job here. You lift the lid up, and then you are greeted with this monstrous case. And some people may or may not like this. I can tell you that if you want a smaller case just for the headphones, there's a lot of things you can buy on Amazon for a pretty reasonable price, but this is designed to hold the headphones, the pads, and all the cables, etc. So I'm going to show you some cool things I like. And I have the headphone turned on for lights and dramatic effect. But what I really like about the case is on the lid, you actually have two separate compartments, which makes it really easy to organize stuff. Now the cables actually re-wrap well. I have used all of these for a while. I'm kind of particular how I wrap my wires. But it comes with these nice little Velcro straps. You got an aux cable in the box and a USB-C charge cable. It will charge while you use it, which is good. So I want to show you the aux cable real quick so I don't forget later. There are two different ends on this, which means it's actually a little challenging to replace the aux cable if it failed. But basically you can see, is that perfectly in focus or not? There we go. One side has that little notch and the other side is a larger, more traditional looking plug. The notch side goes into the headset. It helps alleviate some of the stress of the wire. Basically, you shouldn't have it falling out or creating static or loose connection, etc. It just provides a more stable connection. So I want to point that out because that is common with the other adapter I want to show you, which is to me what makes this headphone kind of special. And I actually reached out to Haymaker a couple times because I wanted to review this headphone. It does something really unique, and that's this guy. This little adapter right here, it's for PC. USB port on one side, you have this controller, and then the same type of aux plug on the other side. Let's get that into focus. Come on, there we go. So same plug, but this uses DIRAC. And DIRAC is, on the home theater side of things, a very well-respected audio tuning and calibration tool, software suite, depending on the component you're buying. It can give you some amazing results if you're using it for tuning audio. So now, admittedly, originally I thought that meant I can do my own DIRAC tunes with this and do custom software. I'd imagine that would have been much more expensive because the licensing is pretty immense. They use DIRAC to tune this, but if you want to do your own, unfortunately you can't. Not the end of the world, because again, I was kind of like, how do they get that for that price? Little misunderstanding there, but I want to tell you that this part is actually really cool and what made it special. So we'll talk about sound quality and how it affects it, but it also gives you volume control and it gives you a mute button for the built-in microphones. To use this properly, you do need to install the required software to enable the DIRAC driver. I'll have a link in the description for that as well. They have it hosted on a couple sites. It's on Google Drive and I think Dropbox right now. This is a newer company, so don't expect like the same website design and software repository of something from, Sennheiser. Doesn't mean it's a bad headphone, but this is part of the growing process, so those links can change. The driver is unsigned. I tested it. I also do cybersecurity as my day job, and I checked the software for any malicious code and it looked clean, and even though it was unsigned, that's just the way it is right now. Eventually it'll get signed, at least for what I'm told, but I just want to let you know, if you see that, don't panic. It still works fine. Now, the other thing you get is a little carabiner clip. I obviously didn't use this. It attaches to the case up here, so if you want to clip it on a backpack, you can. But yeah, I didn't need it. I don't usually travel with headphones too much because I don't travel, COVID. Now, what's really cool about this case design, I told you about the lid. This headphone comes with two different ear pads. You get the PLU or leatherette material, and then you get a perforated fabric, or like a sport fabric material, if you're comparing this to other headphones. It does impact the sound quality. not necessarily in a bad way, it just makes them sound different. But I do like that you get two options because this type of material has different properties to it. Your ears should be a little bit cooler, that'll breathe more, and you'll hear more of your surroundings. But at the same time, if you go with the leatherette, you get better passive noise isolation, which means you hear less of your surroundings and you're basically only hearing the headphone. It's more intimate, and the active noise canceling will do a better job because of it. Now, going into the headphone, and speaking of noise cancellation, there's a primary switch on this that's actually a touch control headphone, but that little switch right there on the lowest position is basically aux mode. That's how you'll use the DIRAC USB aux cord, or running an aux cable to your Xbox or PlayStation controller, a phone with, if you want to use a headphone jack over Bluetooth for any reason, which I don't recommend. But anyway, so you have that switch. Now, you obviously don't need Bluetooth mode when you're in aux. However, ANC, or active noise cancellation, does work when you're using aux or DIRAC. So if you still want the noise cancellation, but you want to use the analog connection into the headphone, you can benefit from both. Not too many headphones give you that flexibility, so I like that. Now, if you want to use Bluetooth on your phone or mobile device, again, just go to Bluetooth and it'll work in pairs very quickly. It shows up as the Haymaker on your Bluetooth list, and then slide it up to keep Bluetooth enabled, and then turn on ANC and all that. Now, all of this does affect your battery life. If you're just doing Bluetooth with no lights whatsoever, all the lights are turned off and ANC is turned off, you actually get over 40 hours of battery life. If you're using Bluetooth with noise cancellation and no lights, you can still expect over 30 hours. And naturally, it drops into the teens if you have everything turned on, all the lights, active noise cancellation, Bluetooth. Your battery life is going to drop a bit. So it varies. I don't want to spend too much time on that. I think the battery life is competitive in the normal modes. This has a very unique LED lighting profile. I mean, if you look at how this looks, this is actually a pretty headphone. Now, this aesthetics for headphones, it's just like art, it's just like music or food. What I like or dislike may not be the same as what you like or dislike, so I try not to get into saying this is the best looking headphone or worst or looks cheap or whatever. All of that is subjective. Now, this is not real carbon fiber. This is not lambskin leather. It's a less expensive headphone because you're paying, I think, more for the sound quality in this case. But overall, that is the aesthetic. It has a really nice looking faux carbon fiber. I actually think they did a good job at replicating a higher end carbon fiber look. It doesn't look like a sticker or printed plastic or anything like that. And the LED lighting on it is pretty classy. Now, you can't turn on and off the LED lighting in two different zones. These are all linked up. And to do that, where I think the pleasant surprise is this has a touch interface that they executed extremely well. So if I swipe up here, I can change my modes, and you can see that I'm changing color. I don't know how well it's going to be in focus with my lighting the way it is. So let's see if I can do this. And I'll start swiping and changing it. There's the white, there's the green, blue. There's 8 color presets. So, and if you go up and down, it changes the lighting mode. If you press and hold, which I'll do now, it'll turn it off. Now what's cool, the LED lighting will work when the headset is powered off. So keep that in mind. Don't just flick the switch and assume you turn off the lights. The reason why it does that is because if you are using aux mode to PC or aux to your controller, you can turn on the lights if you want them on. Otherwise, this can run indefinitely on USB or aux because it doesn't need any battery life for that. It will work completely powered down via aux. So it's pretty flexible. And the other thing I want to say too, to change the ear cups, I'm going to get into comfort very shortly, but they're magnetically attached, which the headset's foldable. I was talking about the whole case thing earlier. You can collapse this nice and small and get a pretty small travel case. So if you're concerned with just traveling with the headset, it's actually pretty easy to travel with. But going back into the ear cups, they actually magnetically attach in a pretty unique way. So I haven't seen this method before, to be honest. Maybe I just haven't reviewed enough headphones yet, but it's a pretty innovative way to do it. And all you do is you look at the label of the ear cup and see the R, and the magnets that are inside just clip it right back in. There's no snapping of plastic or pressure fitting or anything like some other ear cups. It's just a magnetic thing. Now I want to show you this too because I thought this was kind of nifty. When you look at the driver, you can see the driver, and that's the microphone, by the way. That is where the microphone pickup is, and it's on both ear cups. Now when you look at the way this moves, check this out. See how this pivots up and down? So if I put the ear cup back in, you can actually see it move as a whole as well. So even though this has some flex, it'll help create a good seal. That final extra little pivot rotation, basically, I don't want to say 360 degree, but it's a full rounded adjustment. It doesn't specifically pivot on two axes. And because of that, you get a really natural seal. And I think that plays a lot into the natural comfort and feel of this headphone. So going into comfort, there's a lot I really liked about this headphone. For one, the headband, even though it doesn't have a little notch or a ski band goggle, you know, there's a lot of different ways to construct headbands. This has a very wide headband. Let's get that into focus. That is, I know it may not look like much on the camera, but it's about a 1/2 inch wider than I normally see with most headphones. And I think that's what's helping play into the whole comfort thing. You also kind of have this memory foam padding. It's pretty soft. It's not too thick, but to me it has just enough give to it to feel very comfortable, and because it's wider, it helps even the pressure on your head. Clamp force is rather light, and that's because this is a light headphone. It weighs only 322 grams. That's lighter, considering most higher-end headphones can get kind of heavy. It just depends on the build material. So they can get away with a lighter clamp force, meaning it's not squeezing your head too hard. Then when you couple that in with the full pivoting ear cups and a very soft memory foam material ear pad, they are extremely comfortable for long listening sessions. I'm trying to think if there's anything that would get more comfortable than this. I think at that point it may just come down to preference, but this is about as comfortable as it gets for long listening sessions, and that's including using the leatherette ear cups. Now, you switch with the sport mesh material or the perforated fabric, it actually can get even more comfortable in a sense that your ears won't get as warm as they would with the leatherette. Now, they have the ear opening. These baffles for the speaker are not padded. The pads are just deep enough for me where my ears don't hit. These aren't the deepest pads I've seen at this price point, but I've seen others get more shallow than this because they're designed to rest your ear on it. You really don't want your ear touching the baffle because that impacts sound quality. So on the note of the pads, there is a small change. On the leatherette, the pad is a little bit more open. You can see the shape of it there, whereas when you get into the sport fabric material, it kind of narrows up a little bit. So you can see a difference even when I put them side by side, that one has a wider opening than the other. Let's get the lighting a little bit better. So it does impact the sound quality. In some cases, I like the leatherette more. I think for movies, I enjoy using the leather. And then on certain songs, I like the perforated fabric. So with that being said, let's do the mic test real quick, and then we can jump into sound quality, because I think that's where it really starts getting in depth with this headphone. All right, now I'm talking to you on the Haymaker microphone system, and this is using the USB DIRAC connection on the computer. I found that the USB mode and the aux mode sounded very similar to each other. They have a similar gain. So I'll do a Bluetooth test shortly, but one thing I noticed is it's not as loud as some other gaming headsets out there, or most headsets with microphones. This is on the softer side. It has a very innovative way of doing the microphone array. The microphones, as I mentioned earlier, are in the center of the driver. There is a ridiculously good and surprising amount of passive noise rejection from the driver. What I mean by that is if you have music or something playing on the headphones at the same time you're using the microphone, they reduce that sound dramatically, much more than I expected to, because I was like, how are people not going to hear everything you're listening to? So it blocks a lot of it. However, if you are playing a game and you're have a loud game going and you're talking to your buddies, they are going to hear some of your game. Now, that was the only drawback I had with the microphone. I mean, I'll be honest. So I like this headphone a lot. There's a lot of incredible things. I think the microphone portion is my least favorite. For Bluetooth calls, taking phone calls with your friends and family, work, whatever, I think it's okay. And this design actually helps with wind rejection too. So there's some pros to using something like this while not having to deal with a boom in front of your face. But from a purely game perspective, conference calls all day, I do recommend some kind of dedicated microphone for that, because you'll get much better sound quality, and then you can still enjoy the comfort and sound quality that these headphones produce on the listening side. All right, now I'm talking to you on Bluetooth mode. I think on Bluetooth mode, the gain is a little bit higher, so you can hear a little bit more. Even though the microphones are inside, because of the way this array works, it does pick up some of the reverb in the room. And naturally, because it's Bluetooth, you're going to have some artifacting and compression of sound, because you're limited in Bluetooth as far as bandwidth goes for the microphone audio to send back to the phone. It changes bitrate because Bluetooth is really designed to be one directional. And as soon as you have directional audio going in two directions, both listening and sending sound, you lose bitrate, you lose sound quality, and as a result, this is what the microphone sounds. So it's louder, but not technically as clear or smooth sounding as you get on the USB side. Curious what you all think though. Now it's time to move on to sound quality. All right, now it's time for the tangent part where I talk about audio, because this is, I think, what excited me the most about this headphone. So I mentioned before there's a few different ways you can connect this. You can use the aux straight to a cable and run passive. You can use the USB DIRAC enabled sound card to use aux to the headset, or you can use Bluetooth. It's Bluetooth 5.0, supports aptX, aptX HD, low latency, SBC, and AAC codecs. So the codec support is immense, which is great because regardless of what platform or device you're using this on, you should get the best sound quality that device can send out, because this is compatible with basically all of it. Now I started with Bluetooth mode first because I just wanted to get going on it. Charge it up with the USB-C, turned it on in Bluetooth mode, and then it showed up as the Haymaker and it connected no problem. I will say that the Bluetooth connection is rock solid. I never had dropout issues. So anyway, the sound quality of this, a lot of headphones tend to go V-shape, pretty strong bass, dips down in the mids, and then rolls up again on the highs. This, I don't want to say is the opposite. It measures differently than it sounds in your ear, and I think that has to do with the ear shape and how it interacts with your actual ear itself. Because the bass extension is ridiculous. This has insane bass and power handling because you can crank it and it just never seems to let up. This is probably the loudest Bluetooth headphone I've ever used. So if you like to crank it, this is easily going to give you some of the most volume you can get. Now the sound tuning, because it can get that loud, naturally you get nervous depending on how the highs are tuned. It can hurt your ears. These have incredibly smooth, easygoing highs. They're not emphasized almost in any way. They have a pretty linear response. There's a dip right about 5,000 hertz. So which is where the sibilance sound comes from. So the strong S's, something I tend to do because of my teeth. But it's very easy to listen to at louder volumes, which helps give you a little bit more dynamic range, because something that's softer now you can hear while also not blowing out your eardrums on the highs. I did mention the lows. Technically, they measure slightly rolled off. However, if you wore this and I asked you what you thought of the bass, you would say the bass is incredibly strong. And it certainly feels that way. It's almost like wearing home theater speakers on your head. So I actually really like the bass tuning on this. There's a little bit of a dominance of around 800 hertz. So it can impact your sound in some ways. And again, this is the default Bluetooth mode. There's ways to change this, but this is how it came when I just plugged it in and went. So it's a very forgiving sound profile. I didn't find that the default Bluetooth mode extracted every single detail or crispiness that I'm used to with some other headphones that are typically tuned a little bit more V-shape. But at the same time, I had great presence in the mid-range, including rock music and things like that. I think if you listen to jazz type music, something that has really good deep bass guitars, a lot of good vocals mixed in the track, these things sound absolutely incredible. And that's to me where it was just shocking on how good it was at this price range. So that's the default Bluetooth. There's ways you can change that. If you enable active noise cancellation, ANC, it actually starts making it a little bit more V-shape. It cuts out a little bit of the mid-range because of how the active noise canceling is working. So even though it's meant more for ANC, which it works well, it does do a decent job at drowning out background noise. I don't think it works as well as Sony or Bose, but it's definitely up there. It's comparable, if not better, than my Bang & Olufsen Bayoplate Portals. It's really comparable to that. But I actually found I was using it more to tune my audio depending on what track I was listening to. So mess with the switch. I know it sounds kind of weird to do it that way, but it's nice that you get a slightly different sound profile because, again, it makes it more versatile. As of right now, there's no app to tune it on Bluetooth with your phone. You have to just send out whatever your phone is doing if your app you're using doesn't have EQ. Now, on USB mode, this is where things get good. Now, I installed the USB DIRAC driver, and you have three different options. You can do the default, which the lights are all turned off on the USB transmitter. You can do 7.1 mode and HD mode. I'll get straight to the point and say HD mode with the DIRAC USB was my favorite way of listening to this, period. It sounded great on everything I listened to, whether it was movies, music, or games. I basically, that HD tune kind of changes the bass curve a little bit. It actually helps pick up the lower frequencies and it flattens out your bass, and it reduces that dip in the mid-range while also slightly lifting the highs. So the HD sound tuning is amazing, and I think that's really where this headset shines. So if you want a headphone that works well on travel as far as Bluetooth goes, because again, it's really comfortable and it can be very compact if you travel, but when you're listening to it the most, you're at home on your computer, for $330, you're going to get a pretty amazing listening experience using the USB DIRAC controller if you're okay with that wire. So you don't have to buy a sound card upgrade. You don't have to buy a special amplifier. Just right out of the box, that's giving you a pretty versatile sound experience. And that, like I said, was my favorite to listen to for everything. It just was more what I was expecting on this price range for a premium headphone. Now the 7.1 mode is fun, and I usually, if you've watched my other reviews, I'm not a fan of virtual surround processing. It's just not my thing. I tend to be more of a 2-channel guy when it comes to music listening. However, if I were to describe the way this one handles 7.1, if you have a home theater system at home and you put on Dolby Pro Logic 2 music mode, or I think Yamaha has the concert hall and all that, it's not quite the extent of that kind of reverb, but it's almost like you're listening to a surround sound system set in multi-channel music mode. Now, what's insane about this is the way it changed the bass response. It does some weird shaping with the bass to make it sound like that same home theater system has 2 massive ported subwoofers. There's not a lot of slam and hard-hitting bass, but it's like just pure SPL, that deep rumble effect of bass. And normally, like I said, I don't like 7.1. However, when I was listening to or watching the Avengers, I put it in 7.1 mode, and some of those fight scenes, the way the bass was, the way the tuning was, it's kind of like wearing an IMAX theater on your head. And that was super, super fun to listen to. And I haven't heard a headphone give me that home theater cinema experience before. Now, on the music side, I wasn't a fan because I don't like adding reverbs and extra processing to my music. I want it clean and accurate and articulate. But again, you have different modes to play with. You can disable the DSP and it more closely mimics what you get on Bluetooth mode. So if you like that sound profile, you can do it again. And on top of it, with all of those modes I just discussed, if you turn on ANC while connected to your computer, it's again going to carve out a little notch at the mid-range. So while you can't custom EQ this without using your own software, like Equalizer APO or Dolby Atmos and doing the EQ there, the modes built into this mixed with the ANC switch can drastically change the sound quality, and I find that there's a lot of fun ways you can listen to content and enjoy it. Now, if that wasn't confusing enough, now we have the ear pads to add to the equation, which if you've earned or owned high-end headphones before, you know that ear pads can change the sound quality quite a bit. These smooth out the low-end bass a little bit. There's a little bit less hit, and it doesn't hit quite as deep. It's just smoother. Now, at the same time, I found that this opened up the soundstage a bit more and it lifted the highs because of the way these pad shapes are and the material. So if you want a little bit more airiness to your audio mix, or you want to open the soundstage a little bit more, these pads are going to do that. These have good detail, but they don't have the widest soundstage. You don't get the same distance that like an open back headphone would give you in this price range. It's more of an intimate listening experience. This will kind of get closer to that airiness that some people may look for. So I strongly recommend not only changing all the modes, changing the ANC, but also playing with the pads and finding what you tend to like the most. Don't assume that what you get out of the box is exactly how it sounds. And to me, that's what made these more enjoyable. They say on the box, it says it's the only headphone you'll ever need. And me being a headphone collector guy, I'll obviously have a hard time with that. I think the only things I could really nitpick, I guess, at this point is, you don't have a dedicated true microphone that's great for gaming, in my opinion. It's serviceable and it works, but it's not that great for games if you play with friends and you play loud games, to me. The sound quality is fine for it, but your microphone side isn't. So you want to consider a different alternative. Now, you can use this wirelessly on Xbox if you buy those little Bluetooth dongles that go to your controller. They're like $40. However, I would recommend just going to aux mode because you minimize latency. This does work. The USB sound card, by the way, the DIRAC card, actually works on PlayStation 5. It runs UAC 1, which is compatible with PS5. So you can plug the USB card right up front, or you can use the aux to the controller, which I thought got a little bit louder. So there's a lot of ways you can use this. It actually is pretty versatile. Again, I wouldn't say it's the only headset, but for people who need a good headset for home listening and on the go that don't want to buy several headphones, this is certainly a great option at $330. I think the sound quality is really good once you play around with it and you find what setting works for you. And surprisingly, the touch controls worked really well. Even on, I like that there's no single touch that changes something, because if you'd accidentally bump this, it's not going to mess up your phone, for example. But the double tap to play, pause, forward and back to go forward and back tracks, up, down to change volume. It was actually a lot more reliable than I expected. I rarely had an issue where it didn't register my input, and part of that was because I was kind of off center and I didn't quite get close enough to where I should have been. So it could just be, you know, a muscle memory thing. But so that wraps up my long audio tangent, but it was important because I think the audio side is what makes these headphones so unique. Now, at the end of the day, like I said, I don't think there's a perfect headphone or headset out there for anybody, or everyone, I should say. What I like, you may not like. What's important to me may not be important to you. There's comfort, battery life, sound quality, the mics, the style, how it looks and feels in your hand. Do you want certain brand stature and whatnot? So at the end of the day, I think where these really shine and what makes them cool, for me, the most rewarding experiences when I was watching movies. If you are a home theater person but you want a pair of headphones for movies, these have ridiculous performance on watching movies. Now, if you want the most critical listening production you can do, you want the open and airiness and super wide soundstage, these won't do that, but that's kind of by design. They're a closed back dynamic driver. They have different tuning and they're more intimate sounding and rewarding if you're listening to them with the right applications or style of music. Again, it's a preference thing. Those open backs that might have a wider soundstage and more detail, like a open back Sennheiser, they don't have the same bass extension or power handling. They're not portable with Bluetooth. So there's always going to be trade-offs. And I'm not trying to lie and say this is perfect, because there obviously are some flaws or unique characteristics to the headset that make it good in other areas. So with that being said, I hope I answered any questions you may have on learning about this headphone. If I missed something that's important to you, shoot me a comment. I'll do my best to answer. And if I can't answer it, I will talk to the company and find out for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I really appreciate all the support you guys have been giving me. My channel's grown a lot over the past year, so I can't thank you all enough. And I have a lot of great stuff that keeps on coming, including cool stuff like this. So anyway, thank you again so much for the support, and I'll see you next time.